Hello and welcome back. We're going to do something really fun today. I've been planning it for a long time. We're going to cover our sketchbooks. I'll be covering a lot of different types of sketchbooks, so grab which ones you have. And I'll be using the materials you see here. I've got some paintbrushes and gesso. I also have some craft paint and then some golden acrylic fluid paint, as well as a pencil. You may want to use a ruler, it's not necessary. I'm also using some acrylic markers. I'll list everything that I'm using down below. For this first exercise, I'm using my square watercolor reflection sketchbook. It's got this hard plastic-y, maybe faux leather cover. You'll definitely need something to cover your workspace if you don't want it to get messy. It would have been nice to go ahead and just draw right on the cover with this acrylic marker, but of course I tested it first and the paint did smear. So you have to prep the cover before you start using an acrylic marker, which is not really a big deal. You just need to grab yourself some gesso. Gesso is fabulous. You can use it for all sorts of projects, and we'll be using it on almost every idea in this video. So you want to just start with a light coat, and the idea here is to make it a flat, smooth surface. You can sand most gessos, but for me, I'd rather not glop it on too heavily. I just want a light coat. And you want to let it dry and then do a second coat. I tried using acrylic markers after just one coat, and it didn't set properly. This sketchbook has some elastic on the back of it to hold it together, so I've wrapped it with washi tape so it doesn't fall into the wet gesso. You don't see it here, but there's a lot of time in between coats where I had to sit and let things dry before I moved from front to back, so nothing would get ruined in the process. So now that it's completely dry, it's time for the fun part. I've decided to make a geometric design on the front, and I'm using washi tape to make a grid of 9 squares. Feel free to use a ruler if you want the squares to be exactly the same size. I'm using acrylic markers to color in each square, but you could use paint here if you like. Just pick the colors you love and go for it. Some of the colors I used did need a couple of coats, but that was fine with me because I really love the process of just coloring. If you want super straight lines, you can keep the washi tape on the book as you are coloring. I don't think it's super necessary though, because it's really easy, especially if you're using marker, to go over mistakes that you make. You can see here that the dark purple is a little streaky, and I do go over it a second time, but we'll be making designs over these squares, so it's not absolutely necessary that you do 2 coats. So if you love geometric designs like I do, you probably already have some shapes that you really like to make or that you're really comfortable making, and that's what you should fill these squares with. For this first design, I just did some simple triangle, almost triangle shapes. You'll also see a starburst in the left side, and right here I'm drawing some organic stripes. It's whatever you're feeling in the moment. And if you don't like what you do, again, this is something that's really easy to cover up because we're using acrylic markers. If you're not a fan of geometric shapes, you could fill in these squares with things that you do love, like cats or flowers or teacups, or you could even keep the shapes just colored in a solid color. That would look great as well. I really had fun experimenting with what I put in each one. There were definitely designs I did not like, and you'll see how they change in the end. If you are struggling with design ideas, take a look around your room. There could be patterns there that you haven't noticed before. Pinterest and Google are also great places for ideas. I certainly go there myself. Hopefully you'll find something new and fun to try out. Don't feel like you have to finish this project in just one sitting. I did mine over the course of many days. Life definitely got in the way at some points, and it's always good to give yourself some space and look at things with fresh eyes and see if there's anything you might want to change. Here's my finished geometric design. I love how different they all turned out. Some needed a lot of coats and some I got done really quickly, but it was so much fun to do. I also painted the side a dark purple and I painted the back the raspberry color. I thought it looked really good, and somehow the elastic band just matches kind of perfectly. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'd love to hear how yours turned out. This next idea is really quick, lots of fun, but it's also really messy. Make sure you protect your workspace. I am putting a piece of paper underneath my sketchbook and also in between the cover and the first page. We'll be creating an abstract painted cover with just a few materials. I've got an old used gift card and some liquid acrylic paint. You can also use craft paint. And I just add a few dots to the gessoed cover. And it's really simple. You just move the paint around with your card. You can't get the same effect with a paintbrush. You need something like the gift card with a hard edge to move the paint around. You can see I keep flipping the card around to see if there's paint left on it because it often drips down a little bit. And if you kind of fold the card into the surface, you can get more paint to come off of it. This is one of those projects that kind of looks a little funky at first, but just hold tight, it'll look better soon. I'm grabbing a regular craft paint, this is a light lavender, and I'm adding some drops on top of the Payne's Gray that I've already applied. And I take the same card and just drag it around once more. And you'll see it makes some really neat designs, the wet on wet paint, when it mixes in with each other. You might be tempted to stop at the first coat, especially if you really like the design you've come up with. But I found if you do more than one coat, you'll get a richer, deeper color, and you get to play around a little bit more. Be careful because it's easy to put a little too much paint on the surface you're covering, but that's why we have these extra sheets of paper. You can just wipe it off onto them. I made a pretty big mess and was running to the sink right after I finished this coat. Here's what it looked like up close. I used both a matte craft paint and a glossy acrylic paint, and they actually worked really well together. While I let that dry, I thought I'd show you a few examples of the same technique using different colors. No matter what colors you choose, the results are often really striking. Here's what my sketchbook looked like after the first coat on the front, side, and back of the sketchbook. I really love how the back turned out. So I decided to go ahead and do another coat on the top, using the same colors, but varying the way I moved my hand around with the card. It's really fun working this way, getting messy, not worrying about the end result, and just moving the paint around. Since I'm familiar with sealing acrylic paintings and I'm using the same type of paint, I went ahead and sealed this sketchbook as well. I'm using a satin varnish and just painting a light coat on the top, bottom, and side. I do not believe this type of sealer, this satin varnish, will work on acrylic marker based projects, I think you need to use a spray varnish. I will give that a try and let you know how it goes in the comments below. I like how the satin varnish gives a little extra shine to the cover of the sketchbook. Here it is, all dried and complete. You can see how it shines a little bit in the light. And I'm really happy with how easy and fun this was. Let me know if you give it a try. This next idea is probably my favorite of the bunch, and you'll see why soon. As you can see, I've already painted one coat of white gesso, but I made this discovery of black gesso, and boy is it a game changer. Now this spiral sketchbook is really tricky because of all the little bits underneath the spirals. Painting the white under there was really tricky, and you get a lot of white paint on the coils. So I thought I'd give this black gesso a try to see how it works, and I'm really happy I did. The gesso is really creamy and slippery and easy to apply. The trick here is to get a nice, smooth, thin coat across the top of the sketchbook. It's still a bit tricky to get paint in between and under those coils, but it's not a big deal if you get paint on top of the coils because the coils are black and it just blends right in. It's a little finicky and it takes some time, but it is well worth the effort. Ideally, you want a nice thin coat so that there aren't any bumps or ridges that you have to paint over. This cover might look a little familiar to some of you. It's from one of my favorite sketchbook idea videos. We'll be painting really colorful, pretty branches across the page. I'll go ahead and link that video down below. If there's another sketchbook idea video that you love, I invite you to recreate it here on your sketchbook cover instead. And I'd really love to hear which one you choose. I'm using a pencil to layer different kinds of branches on top of each other with a variety of leaf shapes, and eventually I'll paint them in with acrylic paint pens. Don't feel like you have to create the exact same design, but if you really want to, go right ahead. If you want to just put one branch right in the center of the sketchbook page, that would probably look beautiful as well. Here's what my pencil sketch looked like. It's messy and imperfect and even incomplete, but it helps me get started. So I'm picking one of my favorite colors at the moment, lavender, and filling in the center branch. Don't be afraid to mess up here because, as always, acrylic paint pens are really easy to cover up. And if you have a black acrylic marker, it blends right in with the gesso. With certain colors, you may need a couple of coats because they may be a little transparent over the black gesso. As you can see, it's also really easy to erase pencil lines on this black gesso, so don't worry if your lines don't match up completely. want to share a little secret with you. I actually procrastinated so much in starting this video. I think it was because I was afraid that I wasn't going to make the exact perfect cover for each of my sketchbooks. It just seemed like too big of a deal. And now that I'm done, of course, I wish I had done it much sooner because all these pretty designs make getting in my sketchbook so much more appealing. All I want to do is get in there and draw, and they're so pretty to look at. And I really wish I wasn't so worried about what I was going to put on top. So if you're worried too, this is your gentle nudge to just get in there and give it a try. The worst thing that could happen is that you don't like it, and honestly, you could just cover it right up. This cover would have looked lovely with just the decorated branches and leaves, but I decided to take it a bit further and add little gray starburst shapes in the background. And we're done. It is such a transformation from that boring, ugly blue standard sketchbook cover. I'm actually kind of shocked at how much more I want to get in here and do art now that I have this pretty cover on top. Our last sketchbook cover idea is the least messy and the quickest by far. We're using washi tape. I'm using these pretty washi tapes I found on Etsy to cover my tiniest sketchbook. It's only 4 by 4 inches, and I actually won it at a holiday party that I went to last year. Honestly, this idea was sort of an afterthought. I pressed record thinking I was just going to give this a try, and I did not realize how lucky I would get when I finished. It might even be my second favorite sketchbook cover idea. So I'm simply taking the tape and lining it up diagonally across the cover. The great thing about washi is that it's not too sticky, it's easily removed. It also means it's not quite as durable as the other sketchbook ideas, but the beauty of it is that you can remove it and start over with other colors. And I don't know about you, but I have so many washi tapes just gathering dust in my supply closet. I really wanted to use it up, and this is a great way to do it. If I had planned ahead, I may have left longer tails on the sides of the sketchbook. You can see where I ripped it off here, and I'll show you how it looks in the end. It doesn't bother me, but you might want to make yours a little longer, and I'll show you why in a few seconds. Here's where I'm wrapping the tape around the front cover. I'm letting the washi kind of fall where it wants to fall and trimming where I need to trim it. And you can see here it's a little rough around the edges. You could actually cut them a little bit straighter, and if you leave a longer tail, like I mentioned before, you could have them all kind of line up, but I don't mind because I don't really look on the inside cover much. And you could also cover this area with another sheet of paper if you really want to. I'm wrapping the tape around the spine here, but you'll see in a minute that I cut these off at the end, and I cover this with 2 pieces of tape, and it looks a bit more polished. I use scissors to snip off overhanging pieces, making sure to wrap it where I could wrap it. Sometimes they tend to lift up a little, but again, it's a temporary cover and it's just the nature of washi tape. I was really sort of surprised that I could make this brown sketchbook cover look so pretty, but the colors worked well. I just got lucky, didn't I? And here's the side where I covered it with 2 more pieces of the dark brown color. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope I could help you find some fresh new ideas to cover your sketchbooks. I know I had a lot of fun experimenting and getting over my fear of the blank sketchbook cover and adding some flair to these boring old sketchbooks. I had a really good time and I hope you did too. Have a wonderful week and I'll see you soon. Take care.